BIBO, A Confidence Game. Written by Daniel Krynicki on March 25, 2018. Making light of the endeavors of serious folks who have it in mind to do good while they live is not very good policy. So let me say up front, I haven't designed the following picture in the spirit to ridicule the BIBO currency webpage, nor to castigate anyone who tries to contribute useful data for monetary reform. The simple fact is that people are accustomed to using money to pay their bills, to give alms, to save for a rainy day. So don't blame the messenger for pointing out the obvious in this debate between Daniel Krynicki and Mark Gavin that took place at Rasha Photo's Facebook page on or about March 8th through 11th, 2018. Below the first image in this paper, I have also mounted an argument against Mr. Gavin that is based on two papers at his website. Why money cannot be credit is still the same as when I first downloaded it in 2016. I downloaded a gift copy of the Money PSYOP about a year ago. It has not changed either. I actually thought continuation of telling the reasons why Mr. Gavin's logic is a failure on several points would end. It hasn't. In fact, he has refused to correct his erroneous approach. The phrase, quote, circulating medium, unquote, has been understood by some of the best minds in history in the same way for centuries now. The list of professors who understand it in this way is long. I first encountered the phrase in two history publications about 5 years ago. The first was in Professor Rich Dewey's Financial History of the United States, 1915. The second was in the writings of Thomas Jefferson, collected and edited by Paul Leicester Ford, Volume 9, 1898. The phrase is still being used by professors today. A recent one I read is by Professor Sharon Ann Murphy. This 2017 publication is called Other People's Money. It was published by Johns Hopkins University Press. This entire subject therefore cannot be brushed off lightly. Gavin, March 11, 2018. Quote, if I were the conspirator armed with greater physical power and want to obfuscate any disingenuous methods of mine, I would promote attacks on my person that I am sure to defend against, as no one would deny another's right to self-preservation. The last thing I would want is to promote a friendly, respectful, and all-inclusive evaluation of my methods. Unquote. Continued. Quote, thus a confrontation against agents is futile if the agent has all the power, but unveiling the logic of methods and tools forces a common understanding and diminishes the opportunity of wanton abuse. Unquote. End Gavin. So there we have it. With unmitigated logic, this monetary reformer seeks to obfuscate facts with cloaks of misdirection. And his why money cannot be credit, peer-to-peer undoubtedly means privately administered. Tell us now, how do we prosecute fraud in such a system? Who decides when the monetary rules have been circumvented by hook or by crook? Sure, with publicly administered money by force of law, lawyers will have fun inventing escape clauses. But Gavin's BIBO currency is all peer-to-peer, guaranteeing no lawyers will be needed to prop up scams. It's all scam right from the get-go. Here is the result. The super wealthy retain their wealth, while all labor, including professional labor, must grovel to or scam against others who will accept BIBO to conduct transactions. Try to buy a needed house for a family on borrowed interest-free BIBO currency, or obtain student loans that are really not payable to begin with in the existing borrowing at interest method, especially in the professional disciplines, and even more especially when the currency of the realm is needed to pay one's tax bills. And it doesn't mean just income and property taxes. All the other various taxes do stand together and contribute to financial oppression. Gavin's BIBO system may well be a giant escape clause designed to allow the super wealthy to protect their present status as oligarchs. In other words, we should consider that Mr. Gavin and Mr. O'Heffernan are, quote, confidence men, unquote. Quote, confidence men, unquote, dotted the landscape in America during the mid-19th century. Many financial products for sale then were embellished enough so that the average unsuspecting person will purchase a deception. But by looking into the core of the product that was for sale, a serious investigator would be able to determine that it was really a swindle. The term con man had its origins during this period. It is simply a shortened version derived from, quote, confidence men, unquote. Other People's Money by Professor Sharon Ann Murphy, 2017, pages 103 to 106. In view of the accusations that Mr. O'Heffernan has leveled against me personally, I ought to be very careful about misrepresenting any of the facts. But careful examination of Mr. Gavin's BIBO currency forces me to question their motives for strongly insisting that I am misrepresenting their product. The hint of hidden motives may well be behind the entire house of cards they build at his website. Two papers of his, in particular, that I have read carefully led me to suspect his motives. They are The Money Psyop and Why Money Cannot Be Credit. The first is a 68-page booklet that is available as a free gift copy in PDF at his website. The second is also available free by following the link Money vs. Credit in the Articles tab. For 500 years now, private creation of capital and interest in money lending have wreaked a heavy toll upon laborers, manual, skilled, and professional, of the world. While the financial oligarchs continue on in their art of deception, keeping the honest few in bad graces with the unsuspecting majority of the population. David J. Smith of Waxahachie, Texas, raised up a storm of shortwave radio back during the 90s with his Newswatch magazine. He called these divide and conquer artists as, quote, agent provocateurs, unquote. Their teachings are vague enough and misdirect readers away from the only correct solution the people have at prosecuting frauds and scams, a national system of statutory civil laws. We presently have national statutory laws that are based upon vague constitutional language that does not prohibit the charging of interest in money lending as ancient Israel's constitution did. The private money creators have therefore been able to usurp this administration authority to create our money out of the people's public jurisdiction. Simultaneously, at a national level, we instead have an array of alphabet soup agencies that have become expert at divide and conquer tactics. They send their, quote, agent provocateurs, unquote, into any reform movements that threaten the money power's suzerain. Hence, any meaningful changes in law sought by honest reformers are well nigh impossible to attain democratically. This is a reason enough only Jesus can be trusted. He gave us explicit instructions in the New Testament about how we are to be at peace with all, win enemies with love, and recognize that his Father loves mercy. We must be intent upon following all his instructions even while we are financially oppressed. The American Constitution could be amended in a way that will ultimately achieve the liberty that was originally intended for, quote, the people, unquote, within these august founding documents. There is an absence of language in our founding documents which all center around money. Narrow parameters around which money can be created and outlawing interest in money lending are two primary elements missing. On the other hand, our founders were not ignorant about public issuing of credit either. Many of the original colonies became involved in the issuing of credit to pay for public dues. Many of these, quote, bills of credit, unquote, issues were legal tender currency. The history goes all the way back to the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1690. It was proven then and later in other colonies, and again during the Civil War, and possibly again under President John F. Kennedy, that notes to pay for public dues can legally be issued by our Treasury Department. Professor Dewey noted in his book that the Treasury possessed the authority to issue greenbacks constitutionally, in his coverage about the Civil War. Notes therefore can be legal tender currency, whether dubbed, quote, bills of credit, unquote, or, quote, legal tender notes, unquote. Furthermore, if the Treasury can issue, quote, legal tender notes, unquote, to pay for public dues, then the Treasury can issue credit to borrowers as well, and not charge interest or fees in any loan amortization schedule so that loans will be paid in full as soon as the principal is paid back. Amortized payment amounts without interest will retire a mortgage in 6 years rather than the 30 now required for interest-bearing mortgages. All this is doable under a monetary system in which interest in money lending is outlawed. Taylor Pope Williams wrote a law into a configuration that is compatible with the American Constitution. is an amendment that inaugurates a new Treasury division in order to provide these interest-free loans for all. He specifically describes this 28th Amendment that will wrest control of America away from the oligarchs. Notwithstanding all this, we need to vet Mr. Gavin's plan, not just to defeat it, but rather to expose its inherent flaws or deceptions in it that will cause our intended purposes for reform to become a failure. Going through his Why Money Cannot Be Credit shows me a veiled attempt in allowing money creation to continue in private hands. In other words, by not opposing private money creation and private money lending, he therefore allows it to continue de facto. There are 4 places in this paper in which the word, quote, peer, unquote, is used. The phrase, quote, informed peer-to-peer interaction and pressure, unquote, is used in a section he calls, quote, enlightened peer interactions, unquote. Is this his way of allowing our present monetary system to continue for collection of taxes and to remain entrenched? We should have no desire to compete with private money lenders because our money should always have been a public function anyway. For sure, he has opposed our call to make a law that will outlaw interest in money lending. Why public? To be sure, in the model given in Sacred Writ of ancient Israel, it was a national statute. Another national statute prohibited financial oppression. Our entire premise for monetary reform not only includes ending financial oppression through the allowing of interest charging and money lending, but financial oppression through aggressive taxation by government as well. Creating interest-free treasury notes to pay for public dues eliminates the need to fund government operations and public infrastructure through tax collection. Both taxation and usury, in concert, are the main devices used in financially oppressing the people. Where then is our, quote, liberty, unquote, if the oligarchs coerce those in the district of criminals to finance public operations through iron-fisted, autocratic, dictatorial tax collection? We don't own the property our homes are situated on. We rent it from local units of government that levy heavy property taxes. The money psyop. Mr. Gavin published another paper called The Money Psyop, in which several disturbing statements are made in some bullet points. He wrote on page 20 that, quote, money is not a commodity because, unquote, in the present system, it is actually regarded by all as a commodity. We presently collect interest on savings under the Federal Reserve rules that have been allowed by a lack in constitutional language. Money can grow just parked somewhere, so right now it is a commodity. But if we outlaw interest charging, just watch how quickly the commodity approach to viewing money changes. We do not want or need money to be a commodity, so let us outlaw the tool that makes it so. That tool is interest in money lending. He wrote 2 bullets later that, quote, money is not a physical medium of exchange because it has no inherent physical functions, unquote. In another post, we also contended that by issuing it to pay for public dues, it actually represents something of value that is tangible and ever present in our daily lives: government operational costs and public infrastructure. Currency may be a blip on a computer screen, or it may be a sheet of linen with a fancy embroidering and printing layout, but it can be held and felt. Better yet, it can be saved for future use. Thus the earnings one gets in return for labor can be stored for use at a later time. One can encapsulate the linen notes in a plastic pipe that is glued shut at both ends for burial in a secret location. It can therefore be used decades later as long as the nation of issue still exists. The second part of this bullet of his, that money is a record of value, is therefore supported by this savability feature. It should therefore be a record of that which was earned whenever the earner decides to spend it or save it. Conclusion. We here at CAU have chosen an approach to understanding money that acknowledges logic and reason as primary attributes of the human mind for the development of a monetary system that will be fair to an entire nation, not just those with high IQs. A fast food worker should be able to afford food, housing, and transportation easily. One thing the present system has done is train most all people, the great minds along with all others, to understand how simple buying and selling is accomplished using money and credit. In order to protect those whose intellects never rise to high IQ levels, we choose to administer money using a system that is administered with clearly defined and enforceable laws, as well as the ones that everyone will understand. It appears that the BIBO currency may present a formidable distraction that keeps some people's minds off an honest system which is capable of restoring a suitable, distributive monetary balance for all people. We just happen to find that the Christian Bible provides us with a number of passages that are consistent throughout all of its 66 books, all of which demonstrate an acceptable way to approach a monetary reformation. Guess what? Among all the active monetary reformers, there are very few who have promoted an interest-free monetary system. Are the monetary reformists afraid that promoting an interest-free system will somehow stigmatize their identities as economists when they approve a system that Sacred Writ promotes? But if they would look into Sacred Writ closely, they would find the biblical example given for ancient Israel had nothing at all to do with religious activity. Ancient Israel's financial laws were a subset of the laws of Moses that consisted only in civil administration and were not written to regulate any ecclesiastical affairs or ceremonies. We can also build an excellent framework here for case law. If Moses claimed he spoke face-to-face with a divine being whose realm occupied extra-dimensional extent when he received these commandments, statutes, and judgments, we assert here that the entire recorded history, therefore, with the judgments recorded in the Torah, also consists of exemplary case law that is entirely civil in nature. Until all the present field of monetary reformers look into publicly issued interest-free money lending using the two-column ledger method and interest-free payment of public dues, we at CAU should distance ourselves from them, because all such distractions only serve to usurp the little we have in resources. Take your BIBO currency to other countries, Mr. Gavin.